How does a city become so vast that its walls stretch for miles across the plain, turning an entire landscape into a fortified urban world? Along the eastern bank of the Tigris River, the land opens into a wide and fertile plain. In spring, the river carries water down from distant mountains, spreading life across fields and valleys. The terrain is open and gently rolling, with low hills rising in the distance and broad skies stretching above the Mesopotamian horizon. Within this landscape once stood Nineveh. Today the site lies beside the modern city of Mosul in northern Iraq. Low earthen mounds and broken stone mark the outlines of something far larger that once existed here. Grass moves in the wind across long ridges of soil that were once massive defensive walls. But thousands of years ago, this quiet ground held one of the largest cities of the ancient Near East. Nineveh was not simply a settlement along the Tigris River. It was a megacity. The location offered powerful advantages. The Tigris flowed beside the city, providing water, fertile farmland, and a transportation route connecting distant regions of Mesopotamia. Trade roads from surrounding highlands and plains converged here, making the site a natural meeting point for movement across the region. Over time, the city expanded across the river plain. Enormous defensive walls were constructed around the urban landscape, forming a perimeter that stretched for miles. These walls were reinforced with towers and punctuated by monumental gates through which roads entered the city. Inside the walls, the city grew into a complex network of districts. Palace complexes rose on elevated platforms, broad streets crossed the urban space. Administrative buildings and residential quarters filled the ground between the great structures. Seen from above, the scale of Nineveh becomes striking. A vast enclosure surrounded by walls. Gates aligned with major roads, a city that transformed the open plain into an organized urban environment. Yet one question still lingers across the ruins. How did Nineveh grow into one of the largest fortified cities of the ancient world, and what kind of urban planning allowed such an immense walled landscape to function? The plain surrounding Nineveh appears open and calm, but it has always been a landscape shaped by rivers and seasonal change. The Tigris flows steadily along the western edge of the city, carrying water from distant mountains and nourishing the fertile land beside its banks. Smaller streams once crossed the surrounding terrain, feeding fields that supported large populations across the region. Within this setting, Nineveh expanded into a vast urban center. The most striking feature of the city was its enormous defensive wall. Stretching for several miles around the settlement, the wall formed a massive enclosure across the plain. Built from layers of stone and packed earth, it rose high above the surrounding land and was reinforced by hundreds of towers positioned along its length. These towers provided constant watch over the landscape beyond the walls. Along the perimeter, monumental gates opened the city to the outside world. Each gate aligned with major roads leading across the Mesopotamian plains. Travelers, merchants, and caravans approaching the city would pass through these entrances before entering the vast urban space inside. The gates were not simple doorways. They were architectural landmarks built on a monumental scale. Large stone passageways allowed movement through the walls, while towers above them reinforced the defensive strength of the city. Inside the enclosure, the urban landscape unfolded across an enormous area. Wide streets connected major districts. Administrative buildings and residential neighborhoods filled the spaces between palace complexes and public structures. Gardens and canals carried water through parts of the city, linking the urban environment with the river beyond the walls. From above, the design reveals a remarkable structure. A vast rectangle defined by walls, gates positioned along major roads, districts spreading across the interior landscape. Nineveh was more than a fortified settlement. It was a city built to control movement across the plain. Yet the sheer scale of its walls and gates raises another question. How did such an immense city function within its enclosure, and what allowed Nineveh to grow into one of the largest urban landscapes of the ancient Near East? Inside the immense walls of Nineveh, the city expanded across a vast urban landscape that stretched over the Tigris River plain. From the gates, wide roads extended inward, guiding movement through districts that formed the heart of one of the largest cities of the ancient Near East. The interior of the city was not a single crowded mass of buildings. Instead, it unfolded as a network of organized spaces. Residential neighborhoods filled large sections of the enclosure, while broader avenues connected these areas with administrative and ceremonial districts closer to the center. Rising above the surrounding buildings were large palace complexes built on elevated platforms of packed earth and stone. These structures dominated the skyline of the city. From their terraces, much of the urban landscape and the distant plain beyond the walls would have been visible. The placement of these complexes was deliberate. They stood near major roads and central districts, reinforcing the idea that the city's organization radiated outward from its monumental core. Around them, large courtyards and open spaces allowed movement through the administrative heart of the city. Water also played a role in shaping Nineveh's design. Canals carried water from nearby rivers into the city, supplying gardens and helping manage the needs of a large population. These waterways linked the urban center to the fertile plains surrounding it, where agriculture supported the life of the city within the walls. Beyond the gates, the countryside extended in every direction. Fields spread across the river valley, and roads connected Nineveh to distant regions of Mesopotamia. Caravans arriving from the plains would pass through the monumental gates and follow the great avenues leading toward the center of the city. The result was an urban landscape integrated with the surrounding environment. Walls protected the city. Gates guided movement. Canals brought water from the river. Nineveh stood as both a fortress and a megacity. Yet even a city this powerful existed within a world constantly shaped by shifting landscapes and regional change. And over time, the vast walled city would begin to face pressures that tested the balance that once sustained it. Over time, the immense city of Nineveh entered a period of change. The walls still stretched across the plain, and the monumental gates continued to mark the entrances into the city. The Tigris River still flowed beside the settlement, feeding the fertile land that supported the surrounding countryside. From a distance, the vast enclosure remained one of the most impressive urban landscapes in the ancient Near East. Its cities, even those protected by enormous walls, exist within larger worlds. Trade routes shift, regional centers rise and fall, environmental conditions change across the plains and river valleys. As centuries passed, the balance that once supported the immense urban life of Nineveh began to weaken. Some districts within the walls appear to have grown quieter over time. Parts of the city were rebuilt while others gradually declined. The canals that once carried water through the settlement required constant care, and maintaining such a vast infrastructure across the plain would have demanded continual effort. Eventually, the great walled city faced pressures that reshaped its future. The urban landscape that had once thrived behind miles of defensive walls experienced conflict and transformation. Sections of the city were damaged, abandoned, or rebuilt in different forms as the wider political landscape of the region changed. Yet the physical outline of Nineveh never truly disappeared. Today, the ancient walls remain visible as long ridges across the ground. Archaeological remains reveal the positions of gates that once opened toward distant roads. The mounds of palace platforms still rise above the surrounding plain, marking where monumental structures once dominated the skyline. The vast enclosure can still be traced across the landscape. And so the question returns: how did Nineveh become one of the largest fortified cities of the ancient world? Part of the answer lies in geography: the fertile Tigris plain, the river routes, and the crossroads of trade across Mesopotamia. Another part lies in urban planning. The walls, gates, canals, and districts transformed open land into an immense organized city. Nineveh was not only protected by its walls, it was defined by them. Even now, across the plains of northern Mesopotamia, those walls remain, a silent outline of one of the ancient world's greatest megacities. If this journey through the ancient landscape of Nineveh stayed with you, you may enjoy exploring more lost megacities of the ancient world. And what do you think made Nineveh so powerful? The immense walls that protected it, or the vast plains that sustained it?